The rain fell hard that afternoon, mixing with the tears on Lisa Johnson's face as she watched her son's coffin being lowered into the ground. Her 17-year-old boy, Andra, was gone forever. The small crowd of family members and friends huddled under black umbrellas, their faces marked with grief and disbelief. How could a young man with so much promise be gone so suddenly? "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mrs. Johnson," people kept saying as they squeezed her hand or gave her quick hugs before hurrying to their cars. But Lisa barely heard them. Her eyes stayed fixed on that wooden box disappearing into the earth. That box held her baby, her firstborn, her pride and joy. The police had found Andrew's body in an alley behind their apartment building in the early hours of Sunday morning. They quickly ruled it an overdose, just another statistic, another black teenager lost to drugs in their neighborhood. Case closed. But Lisa knew better. "My son didn't do drugs," she had insisted to the detective assigned to the case. Officer Wilson had given her a look that said he'd heard this line from too many parents before. "Ma'am, the evidence suggests otherwise," he had replied with a sigh. "We found traces of substances in his system. Sometimes kids hide things from their parents." But the bruises told a different story. The marks on Andrew's knuckles showed he had fought back against someone. The strange bruise pattern on his neck didn't match an overdose scenario. Lisa had pointed these out, but the police seemed eager to file the case away. As the last of the mourners left the cemetery, Lisa stood alone in the rain. Her sister Tanya tried to pull her toward the car. "Come on, Lisa. You'll catch your death out here," Tanya said, her voice gentle but firm. "Just one more minute," Lisa whispered, her eyes never leaving the grave. Back at her apartment, Lisa couldn't bring herself to enter Andrew's room. The door remained closed, like a shrine to the life that once filled their small home with music, laughter, and dreams of college basketball scholarships. Andrew had been scouted by 3 universities. He had plans, future, purpose. That night, after Tanya had finally gone home and the casserole dishes from sympathetic neighbors were stacked in the refrigerator, Lisa found herself scrolling through Andrew's phone. The police had returned it along with his other belongings. Most of his messages were typical teenage stuff: basketball practice times, homework questions, flirty texts with a girl from his math class. But then she found something odd. Several deleted messages recovered from his trash folder. "Stay out of this if you know what's good for you. Last warning. We know where you live." Lisa's hand trembled. She dropped the phone onto the kitchen table. Her mind raced. What had Andrew gotten himself involved in? Or what had he discovered? Why hadn't he told her if he was in trouble? The next morning, Lisa began her own investigation. She went to Andrew's school and talked to his friends, his teachers, his coach. Most seemed genuinely devastated by his loss, but a few appeared nervous, avoiding eye contact. He was asking questions, one of his teammates finally admitted when Lisa cornered him after practice. About Coach Thompson and some of the guys who hang around after hours. What kind of questions? Lisa pressed. About packages, deliveries, money changing hands. Andrew thought something fishy was happening with the youth program funding. He was keeping notes. But where were these notes? Lisa tore through Andrew's room that evening, checking under the mattress, behind drawers, inside his shoes. Nothing. As she sat exhausted on his bed, surrounded by his things, a terrible thought occurred to her. What if whatever Andrew had discovered was the reason he died? What if the evidence was still with him? Lisa looked out the window at the darkening sky. The funeral director had called earlier. There was a problem with some paperwork, and they needed to postpone the final burial for 3 more days. At first, Lisa had been upset about the delay, but now an idea began to form in her mind. A desperate, perhaps crazy idea. But if the police wouldn't look for the truth, she would find it herself, even if it meant doing something unthinkable. 3 days after the funeral, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with newspaper clippings spread out in front of her. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting a pale glow on the stories she'd collected. Stories of young black men from her neighborhood, all found dead, all cases quickly closed by police. Some ruled as overdoses, others as gang violence. All of them forgotten by everyone except their families. Lisa rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept properly since Andrew died. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, his smile, heard his voice saying, I'll be back before dinner, May. But he never came back. The phone rang, cutting through the silence of her apartment. It was Mr. Carter from the funeral home. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm calling about your son's burial," he said, his voice formal and measured. "There's been an issue with some paperwork. We'll need to postpone the final burial for another 2 days. I apologize for any inconvenience." Lisa's mind raced as she put down the phone. 2 more days before Andrew would be laid to rest permanently. 2 more days when his body would remain at the funeral home. A wild idea that had been forming in her mind suddenly seemed possible. "You've lost your mind, Lisa," her sister Tanya said later that afternoon when Lisa shared her plan. They sat on Lisa's faded couch, cups of untouched tea growing cold on the coffee table. "This isn't some TV show. You can't just put a camera in a coffin." "Why not?" Lisa leaned forward, her voice intense. "The police won't help. They've already written Andrew off as just another drug case. If someone hurt my boy, if someone is hiding something, I need to know." Tanya shook her head, her earrings catching the light. "Let him rest in peace, Lisa. This won't bring him back." "I'm not trying to bring him back," Lisa whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm trying to get him justice." After Tanya left, Lisa went online. She found a small camera that could record for hours, motion activated with night vision. It cost nearly half her paycheck, but she didn't hesitate to order it with overnight delivery. The next morning, Lisa called in sick to her job at the hospital where she worked as a nursing assistant. She couldn't focus on caring for patients when her mind was consumed with her plan. The small package arrived before noon. A tiny camera no bigger than a button. Lisa tested it, hiding it in her living room and watching the footage on her phone. It worked perfectly, capturing clear video even in dim light. That evening, she sat at Andrew's desk, looking through his schoolbooks again. His basketball trophies watched over her like silent guardians. In his math notebook, between pages of equations, she found a hastily scribbled note. "Coach T Tuesday nights. Back door. White car." It wasn't much, but it confirmed her suspicion that Andrew had been investigating something. "I'm going to find out what happened to you," she promised the smiling boy in the framed photo on his desk. "No matter what." The next morning, Lisa dressed carefully in her church clothes, a simple black dress and low heels. She did her hair and applied light makeup, wanting to look respectable. The tiny camera was tucked safely in her purse, along with a small screwdriver and some tape. "You sure about this?" Tanya asked when she picked Lisa up. Despite her objections, Tanya had agreed to help. Family stuck together, even for crazy plans. "I've never been more sure of anything," Lisa replied, clutching her purse tightly. The funeral home was quiet when they arrived. Mr. Carter greeted them in the lobby, his suit perfectly pressed, his smile professional. "Mrs. Johnson, Ms. Williams, what can I do for you today?" he asked. Lisa had rehearsed her story. "I'd like to leave something with my son before the final burial. A letter and his favorite keychain. It's important to me." Mr. Carter nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Let me take you to the preparation room. Your son's casket is there." "Actually," Tanya cut in smoothly, "I need to discuss our payment plan with you, if you don't mind. My sister can handle the personal items." The distraction worked perfectly. While Tanya kept Mr. Carter busy with questions about payment options in his office, Lisa was led to a separate room by an assistant who then left her alone to have a private moment. Lisa's heart pounded as she approached the polished wooden casket. With trembling hands, she opened it. Andrew lay there, looking peaceful in his best suit. For a moment, grief overwhelmed her, and she had to grip the edge of the casket to steady herself. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered, "but I need to know the truth." Working quickly, she used the screwdriver to loosen a small section of the coffin's padding near the head area. She placed the tiny camera inside, positioning it carefully so its lens had a clear view, then secured it with tape. She reattached the padding, making sure everything looked undisturbed. Just as she finished, she heard footsteps approaching. Lisa quickly placed a folded piece of paper and Andrew's basketball keychain visibly near his hands, the official reason for her visit. She was adjusting his collar when the assistant returned. "Everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?" he asked. Lisa nodded, wiping away genuine tears. "Yes, thank you for giving me this time with him." That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, waiting for the motion-activated camera to send alerts. Would anyone visit the funeral home after hours? Was she crazy to think there was more to Andrew's death? Maybe Tanya was right. Maybe grief had driven her to madness. But at 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed with an alert. Someone was in the room with her son's coffin. 2 nights after placing the camera, Lisa finally had a chance to check the footage. She had been working double shifts at the hospital, partly to make up for the day she'd taken off and partly to keep her mind busy. Her hands shook as she connected her phone to the TV screen, making the video larger and clearer. The first several hours showed nothing, just the empty room with her son's coffin sitting peacefully under the soft funeral home lights. Lisa fast-forwarded through it, her heart racing with both hope and fear. What if she found nothing? What if this crazy plan showed that Tanya was right, that grief had clouded her judgment? The timestamp on the video hit 1:24 a.m. when movement caught her eye. Lisa's finger slammed on the pause button, then she hit play at normal speed. Her breath caught in her throat. 3 men entered the preparation room. One was the night attendant she'd seen briefly at the funeral home, a thin man with glasses. The other 2 were strangers to her, though one of them looked vaguely familiar. They moved with purpose, checking the door behind them before approaching Andrew's coffin. "Hurry up," one of them said, his voice muffled but clear enough through the camera's microphone. "We only got a few minutes before Thomas does his rounds." Lisa watched in horror as they opened her son's coffin. The camera angle, hidden in the padding near Andrew's head, captured their faces clearly as they leaned over. The tallest one, wearing a baseball cap, looked familiar. Lisa suddenly remembered seeing him standing in the background at several of Andrew's basketball games. "Check his pockets again," the man in the cap ordered. The night attendant reluctantly reached into the coffin. "I already told you there's nothing here," he whispered nervously. "I checked when he first came in, like you asked." "Check again," the third man insisted. "The package has to be somewhere on him or in his stuff. The boss is going crazy over this." Lisa watched, feeling physically sick, as they surged around her son's body, lifting his suit jacket, checking the pockets, even feeling inside the lining of the coffin itself. Their hands moved across her baby's body with no respect, no reverence. Tears of rage filled her eyes. "Nothing," the night attendant finally said. "I swear, there's nothing here." The man in the cap pulled out a phone. "You sure the kid had it on him?" "Positive," the third man replied. "He took it from the gym office. We saw him. That's why we had to deal with him." Lisa's hand flew to her mouth. They were admitting it. They had dealt with her son. The overdose was a cover-up. The man in the cap made a call. Lisa turned up the volume, straining to hear. "It's not here, boss," he said into the phone. "We've checked everywhere. Yeah, we're sure. Maybe at his house. His mother might have found it by now. Yeah, we can check there next." Ice filled Lisa's veins. They were planning to come to her apartment, to search through Andrew's things, or worse. The 3 men closed the coffin and left the room, their whispered conversation fading. The last thing the camera caught was the man in the cap saying, "Whatever that kid was carrying, his mother might have it now. We need to pay her a visit tomorrow night." Lisa sat frozen on her couch, the video still playing, showing an empty room once again. Her mind raced. They had killed her son over some package he had taken. Something important enough to kill for, and now they were coming for her. She needed to move fast. First, she saved a copy of the video to a cloud account and a USB drive. Evidence. Then she called Tanya. "You were right," Lisa told her sister, her voice surprisingly steady. "Andrew didn't just die. He was killed. And I have proof now." "Oh my God," Tanya breathed. "What are you going to do?" "Take this to the police, but not our local precinct." "I don't know who to trust there." "I'm going to the downtown headquarters, ask for someone higher up." Lisa paused. "And Tanya, I need to stay with you tonight. They're planning to come to my place." After hanging up, Lisa packed a small bag with essentials. As she moved around her apartment, she looked at every corner with new eyes. What was the package Andrew had taken? What had her son discovered that was worth killing him for? She searched his room one more time, desperately looking for anything she might have missed. Under his mattress, inside his shoes, behind his posters. Nothing. As Lisa zipped up her bag, ready to leave for Tanya's place, her eyes fell on Andrew's old basketball. The one he'd used since middle school, so worn that the grip was smooth in places. She picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. Something felt off. The ball seemed slightly heavier on one side. Lisa squeezed it, turning it in her hands. There was a small, almost invisible slit in the rubber, carefully sealed with some kind of glue. Someone had cut open the ball and sealed it again. With trembling fingers, Lisa found a knife and carefully widened the slit. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small USB drive. "Oh, Andra," she whispered. "What did you find?" A car horn humped outside. Tanya had arrived to pick her up. Lisa quickly pocketed the USB drive and grabbed her bag. Whatever secrets this drive held, they had cost her son his life. Now they might help bring his killers to justice. As she hurried to her sister's car, Lisa felt both terrified and determined. The men who had killed her son didn't know what they were dealing with. They thought they were hunting her, but now, armed with evidence, she was hunting them. Lisa didn't wait for morning. After finding the USB drive hidden in Andrew's basketball, she and her sister Tanya drove straight to the downtown police headquarters. The building stood tall and intimidating in the night, its windows glowing against the dark sky. Lisa clutched her purse containing both the USB drive and her phone with the video footage, her knuckles white with determination. "You sure about this?" Tanya asked as they sat in the car across the street. "What if they don't believe you? What if they're all in on it?" Lisa took a deep breath. "Not all cops are bad. Andrew always said that. We just need to find the right one." Inside the station, the fluorescent lights made Lisa's tired eyes sting. The desk officer looked up from his computer, his face showing mild surprise at visitors so late at night. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked. "I need to speak with someone about my son's death," Lisa said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Not from our local precinct. Someone higher up." Maybe it was the determination in her eyes or the slight tremble in her hands, but the officer didn't dismiss her. Instead, he picked up his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, Lisa sat across from Detective Washington, a serious-looking woman with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that had seen too much. Tanya waited nervously in the hallway. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand you have information about your son's death?" the detective asked. Lisa nodded and placed her phone on the desk. "My son didn't die from an overdose. He was killed. And I have proof." She explained everything. Her suspicions about Andrew's death, the hidden camera, the men searching his coffin. As she played the video, Detective Washington's expression changed from polite skepticism to focused attention. When the man in the cap mentioned dealing with Andrew, the detective paused the video. "You recognize him," Lisa said. It wasn't a question. Detective Washington nodded slowly. "His name is Ray Thompson, basketball coach at your son's school, but we've had our eye on him for a while. Nothing concrete enough for charges until now." Hope sparked in Lisa's chest. "So you believe me?" "This video is compelling evidence, Mrs. Johnson, but what were they looking for?" "Do you have any idea what this package might be?" Lisa reached into her purse and pulled out the USB drive. "I found this hidden inside my son's basketball just before coming here. I haven't looked at what's on it yet." The detective took the drive carefully, as if it might explode. "Let's find out what your son discovered that cost him his life." They moved to a computer at the detective's desk. As the files loaded, Lisa's heart pounded in her ears. The screen filled with documents, spreadsheets, and several video files. Detective Washington opened one of the videos. It showed Coach Thompson and several men, including one Lisa recognized as a local police officer, in the school gym after hours. They were unloading boxes from a white van, checking contents, exchanging money. Andrew's voice came softly from behind the camera. "Third delivery this month. Officer Clark providing security again. Your son was documenting a drug distribution operation," Detective Washington said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "using the school basketball program as cover." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. He was trying to do the right thing. The detective opened a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, names. Your son was thorough. She looked at Lisa with newfound respect. He was brave. Too brave for his own safety. As they continued examining files, Detective Washington's phone rang. Her expression darkened as she listened to the caller. "Mrs. Johnson," she said after hanging up, "the officer who handled your son's death investigation just called in sick and cleaned out his desk. He's running. Your local precinct might be compromised." A chill ran down Lisa's spine. "Does that mean?" "It means you were right to come here instead of your local station, and it means you might be in danger." The detective stood up. "We need to move quickly. Those men said they were coming to your apartment tonight, correct?" Lisa nodded, suddenly remembering the threat. "My sister's car is outside. We can go to her place." "No," Detective Washington said firmly. "We need to place you in protective custody immediately. This case just got much bigger than your son's murder. We're looking at police corruption and a major drug ring. Everything happened fast after that." Lisa called Tanya in from the hallway and explained the situation. Within an hour, they were both settled in a safe house across town, a small apartment with basic furniture and heavy locks on the doors and windows. A female officer named Rodriguez stayed with them, kind but vigilant. That night, as Tanya slept in the bedroom, Lisa sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. She thought about Andra, his smile, his dreams, his courage. He had discovered something wrong and had tried to make it right, even at great risk to himself. "I'm finishing what you started, baby," she whispered to the night sky. "Your death won't be for nothing." Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Washington. "Search warrant approved for Thompson's house and the school gym. Moving at dawn. Stay safe." Lisa closed her eyes, feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. The camera hidden in Andrew's coffin had been a desperate move, born of a mother's need for truth. She never imagined it would uncover something this big, this dangerous. Outside, the night was quiet, but Lisa knew that by morning, everything would change. The men who killed her son would face justice. The corrupt system that protected them would be exposed. Andrew's death would have meaning. But as dawn approached, Lisa's phone buzzed again with another message from Detective Washington. "Thompson's house empty. He's gone. Stay on high alert." Lisa's mouth went dry. If Thompson had escaped, that meant he knew they were coming. Someone had warned him. The corruption ran deeper than they thought. And if Thompson knew about the raid, he might also know where she was. The USB drive contained far more than Lisa had imagined. As Detective Washington showed her the following morning, Andra had meticulously documented a complex scheme involving Coach Thompson, 2 local police officers, and several others who used the school's basketball program as a front for drug distribution. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos, videos, dates, amounts, and even recordings of conversations. Andra had been thorough, careful, determined to expose the truth. "Your son was incredibly brave," Detective Washington said as they sat in the small kitchen of the safe house. "But he uncovered something much bigger and more dangerous than he realized." Lisa stared at the photos spread across the table. One showed Coach Thompson handing an envelope to Officer Clark, the same officer who had been first on the scene when Andra's body was found. Another showed packages being transferred from a white van to school equipment bags late at night. "How deep does this go?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've identified at least 3 officers involved so far," Detective Washington replied, her face grim. "But there could be more. That's why we're keeping this investigation tight. Only people I personally trust are working on it." Lisa nodded, understanding the implications. "That's why Thompson knew about the raid. Someone warned him." "Exactly. And that's why you need to stay here where it's safe." The detective gathered the photos into a folder. "The good news is that we've frozen Thompson's accounts and put out an alert. He won't get far." But Thompson wasn't Lisa's only concern. "What about my apartment?" They said they were going to search it. "We had officers watching your place all night. 2 men showed up around 3 a.m. We arrested them trying to break in." Detective Washington smiled slightly. "They're being very quiet, but we'll get them to talk." A small victory, but Lisa couldn't feel relief yet. Not while Thompson was still out there. Not while her son's killers remained unpunished. That afternoon, as Lisa tried to rest on the small couch in the safe house, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Mrs. Johnson." The voice sent a chill down her spine. "Coach Thompson. I think we need to talk." Lisa's hand tightened around the phone. She caught Officer Rodriguez's attention and mouthed Thompson while putting the call on speaker. "How did you get this number?" Lisa asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have friends in many places," Thompson replied. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "I know what you found. I know what you gave the police." Officer Rodriguez was already on her radio, alerting Detective Washington about the call. "You killed my son," Lisa said, anger replacing fear. "You're going to pay for that." It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Thompson actually sounded regretful. Andrew was a good kid, a great player. But he saw something he shouldn't have. "We just wanted to scare him, get back what he took." Things escalated. Escalated? Lisa's voice rose. "You murdered my child and made it look like an overdose. You disrespected his body, searching his coffin like he was nothing. Business is business, Mrs. Johnson, nothing personal." Thompson's voice hardened. "But here's what's going to happen now. You're going to tell the police that the video was faked, that you were crazy with grief and made it all up. You're going to say you planted that USB drive yourself." Lisa nearly laughed despite the situation. "And why would I do that?" "Because I know where your sister lives. I know she has 2 young children. It would be a shame if something happened to them." Ice filled Lisa's veins. Tanya had left the safe house that morning to check on her kids and get some clothes. Was Thompson watching her? "Don't you dare threaten my family," Lisa said, her voice low and dangerous. "Then be smart about this. Meet me alone. Tonight at 9 at your son's school gym. We can work something out. Or I can visit your sister instead. Your choice." The line went dead. Lisa looked up at Officer Rodriguez, whose face reflected her own horror. Within minutes, Detective Washington called back. "We triangulated the call. He's in a motel just outside the city limits. We're sending a team now." "My sister," Lisa began, "already handled. We've sent officers to bring her and her children to a different safe location. They're fine, Mrs. Johnson." Lisa sank back onto the couch, relief washing over her. But there was something else bothering her. "He wanted me to meet him at the school gym tonight. Why there? Why not somewhere more private?" Detective Washington was silent for a moment. "That's a good question. The gym would be empty at night, but it's still a public building with multiple access points." She paused. "Unless." "Unless what?" Lisa pressed. "Unless there's something still there he needs to retrieve, something important enough to risk meeting you." Lisa thought of Andrew's careful documentation. Had he missed something? Had there been something at the gym all this time, something that could further incriminate Thompson and his partners? The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Officers raided the motel, but Thompson had already fled, leaving behind a room full of hastily abandoned clothes and a laptop that was quickly sent to forensics. Detective Washington organized a team to stake out the school gym, ready to move in once Thompson arrived. "I want to be there," Lisa insisted, standing firm in the face of the detective's objections. "I need to see his face when you arrest him. I need to look in his eyes and make sure he knows it was Andrew's mother who brought him down." "It's too dangerous," Detective Washington argued. "We don't know who else might be there or what Thompson is planning." But Lisa wouldn't back down. "My son died trying to expose these people. I put a camera in his coffin to find the truth. I'm not hiding now when we're so close to justice." Perhaps it was the fire in Lisa's eyes or the quiet determination in her voice, but something made the detective relent. "You'll stay in a surveillance van 2 blocks away. You'll have video and audio of everything happening inside. But you do not leave that van under any circumstances. Are we clear?" Lisa nodded. Crystal clear. As night fell, Lisa sat in the back of an unmarked police van, watching monitors that showed the empty school gym from multiple angles. Hidden cameras had been placed throughout the building hours earlier. Armed officers in plain clothes were stationed at every exit. It was almost time. "He's here," a voice announced over the radio. Lisa's heart hammered in her chest as she watched a figure enter the gym through a side door. Coach Thompson, looking nothing like the confident man who had stood on the sidelines cheering Andrew's team. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes darting nervously around the space. He moved directly to the bleachers and began examining something underneath. Lisa leaned closer to the monitor, wondering what he could be looking for. Then everything happened at once. The gym doors burst open as officers rushed in, shouting commands. Thompson spun around, something clutched in his hand. There was a flash, a bang, voices shouting, and then silence. Lisa sat frozen, staring at the monitors as officers surrounded Thompson's fallen body. Whatever he had been reaching for, whatever secret had been hidden beneath those bleachers, it hadn't been worth dying for. But her son had been. 6 months passed like a dream. Lisa sat in the back of the crowded courtroom, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she waited for the judge to read the verdicts. Beside her, Tanya squeezed her shoulder in silent support. The room was packed with reporters, police officers, and community members, all waiting to hear the outcome of what had become the biggest police corruption case in the city's history. In the case of State versus Thompson, the judge began, her voice filling the hushed courtroom. Lisa closed her eyes. Coach Thompson had survived his injuries from that night in the gym, only to face justice in this courtroom. Along with him stood 5 other defendants, 2 police officers, and 3 men who had helped run the drug operation through the school's basketball program. On the count of murder in the first degree of Andrew Johnson, we find the defendant guilty. A collective gasp swept through the room. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't move to wipe them away. Guilty. The word she had waited half a year to hear. The judge continued reading the verdicts, guilty on all counts for all defendants. Charges ranging from drug trafficking to police corruption to obstruction of justice. The evidence Andrew had collected, combined with what Lisa had discovered through her desperate act of placing a camera in her son's coffin, had been irrefutable. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Lisa, shoving microphones in her face. "Mrs. Johnson, how does it feel knowing your son's killers will be brought to justice? Do you regret placing the camera in your son's coffin? What would you say to other mothers who have lost children to violence?" Lisa stood straight, her dignity intact despite the chaos around her. Detective Washington stood nearby, creating a buffer between Lisa and the most aggressive reporters. "My son was a hero," Lisa said simply. "Andrew saw something wrong and tried to make it right. He died because of his courage. I just finished what he started." The case had revealed a drug operation that reached deep into the community, using students as unwitting couriers and the school's basketball program as cover. 3 police officers had been involved, not just looking the other way, but actively helping transport drugs and intimidate anyone who got in the way. What Thompson had been reaching for under the bleachers that night was a small black book with names, dates, and amounts, a backup record of their operation that electronic evidence couldn't capture. That book, combined with Andrew's USB drive and Lisa's Coffin camera footage, had sealed the fate of everyone involved. As the crowd of reporters finally thinned, Lisa walked slowly down the courthouse steps with Tanya and Detective Washington. "What will you do now?" the detective asked gently. Lisa looked up at the blue sky, thinking of her son. Keep his memory alive. Make sure this doesn't happen to another child. And she had already started. During the long months of the trial, Lisa had begun speaking at community meetings, working with local youth groups, pushing for more oversight of school programs. People listened to her, the mother who had gone to extraordinary lengths to find justice for her son. With help from neighbors and community leaders, Lisa had established the Andrew Johnson Foundation, dedicated to providing safe activities for young people and resources for reporting corruption or crime without fear. The foundation had already received enough donations to fund after-school programs at 3 local schools. 2 weeks after the verdict, on what would have been Andrew's 18th birthday, Lisa stood before a crowd gathered in the community center. The same basketball court where Andrew had once played now filled with people come to celebrate the official launch of his foundation. "My son loved basketball," Lisa began, her voice strong despite the emotion behind her words. "But more than that, he loved truth. He believed in doing what was right, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous." She looked out at the sea of faces, parents, children, teachers, officers from the reformed police department. Detective Washington sat in the front row, now promoted to lead a new anti-corruption task force. Andrew didn't get to finish high school. He didn't get to go to college on that basketball scholarship he worked so hard for. He didn't get to grow up and become the man I know he would have been. Lisa paused, letting the weight of those lost possibilities sink in. But his life still matters. His courage still matters. Behind her, a large photo of Andra smiled down at the crowd, not his somber school portrait, but a candid shot of him laughing on this very court, ball in hand, joy radiating from his face. When I put that camera in my son's coffin, I was desperate for answers, Lisa continued. I never imagined it would lead to exposing such a huge operation. I never thought it would change our community the way it has. From the back of the room, a small group of Andra's former teammates began a slow clap that quickly spread throughout the crowd. Today, we honor Andra not just by remembering him, but by continuing his work, by standing up for what's right, by protecting our children, by building the kind of community where young people can thrive without fear. As Lisa stepped away from the microphone, people rose to their feet, applauding thunderously. Tanya handed her a ceremonial scissors to cut the ribbon on the new youth center space funded by the foundation. Later that evening, Lisa visited Andra's grave. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful in the golden light of sunset. She placed fresh flowers on the simple headstone and sat on the grass beside it. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "We changed things. Your life mattered. It still matters." The wind rustled gently through the trees overhead, almost like a response. Lisa closed her eyes and felt, for the first time since Andra's death, a sense of peace washing over her. The pain would never fully disappear, but alongside it now lived purpose, determination, and a fierce kind of pride in her son's legacy. What had begun with a mother's desperate act, placing a camera in her son's coffin, had ended with justice not just for Andra, but for an entire community. His truth had finally been told.